How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I've got something a little bit special for you. And this is nothing unique to the raid creator scene or even just any gaming scene in general, but people love information. People love to know what they should be doing with their time. And in a game like Raid, which can demand a lot of your time, something you might be thinking to yourself once you've gotten your starter up to level 60 is, who do I work on next? So I've decided to go through and pick every single champion that I think will be worth your investment. Stocks are rising, so get ready to invest. Quick little disclaimer, we're now on day 6, and this might be a little bit confusing because you might be wondering to yourself, well, your first 2 videos were only a couple days ago, and they were day 1 and 2. And that is true. I do some pre-recording from time to time because I would really like to be able to upload 1 video per day. Right now, I'm just kind of vibing with YouTube. If this thing takes off or I find that I really enjoy it, you know, there's definitely room for growth and things that I think I would like to do to add to the viewing experience. But for now, the viewing experience is going to be every single champion I think you should work on. Now, disclaimer, most of these champions I don't actually think you should bring to 60. I think if you 5-star them and invest some copies into them to increase their skills, bring them to 50, and then once you start pulling shards and perhaps getting better champions that you really should bring to 60, then you can feed them later on and you've kind of double dipped your time. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so starting with the first faction, the Bannerlords, I have these set as kind of honorable mentions. These champs I definitely don't think you bring to 60, but I think bringing them to 50, they can help you get through some of those mid stages, you know, stage 7 to maybe 13 in places like Dragon, Fire Knight, and Ice Golem. The first one is Wordbearer. Now, I really like Wordbearer because I am a sucker for buffs that are 2-turn buffs on 2-turn cooldown. As you see here, she's going to give you a 30% increased defense for 2 turns on a 2-turn cooldown, which means your team is always going to have that defense running. On her A1, she's got some decreased accuracy, which can be good in niche scenarios, but really it's the increased defense, being able to continuously run it on your team, I think is chef's kiss. We've also got Commander, who has a very unique ability in her A2. 3-turn cooldown once you've invested some copies into her. Heals the ally with the lowest HP by 40% of this champion's max HP. So essentially, what you want to do with Commander is you want to build her with tons of health. And when she heals that target, if it completely fills their health bar, it's going to fill their turn meter. And so now what you get is you get this interesting kind of dichotomy where every couple turns, certain targets are taking extra turns. And extra turns in this game is broken, if for no other reason than you can get your cooldowns on, like, say, your nukers faster. On the A1, she's also got a 25% chance with her attack to just stun a target, and that'll help you get through waves. However, the star of the show here, I think, is Valerie. And I think a lot of people, I've seen tier lists where Valerie is the #1 pick for Bannerlords, and it can kind of be a gimme because the reason why I'm putting rares on this list is because they're campaign farmable. Act 1, you can farm as many copies of Valerie as you want. And she's really good for where she's at in the game. On her A3, 5-turn cooldown, which is pretty long. It's pretty gnarly. Places a shield buff on all allies for 2 turns. The value of the shield depends on this champion's level. Then heals each ally according to the number of buffs they are currently under. So if you put her towards the end of your team, the first round, all of your buffs come through, she puts the shield, heals, and then once it starts cycling, you'll have them all linked up. Again, 5 turns is pretty steep. However, where she really shines is she is, to the best of my knowledge, and I've gone through this entire list of uncommons and farmable rares, she is the only champion that can give you an increased duration on all of your buffs, which can be absolutely insane for places like Clan Boss, where once you're going from easy and normal to hard and brutal and all that, making sure that every single round that the Clan Boss is hitting your team, you have all of those vital buffs like small strengthens, increased defense, shields, you name it. Her being able to increase all of those by a turn ensures that your team will probably never get, if you tune it correctly, will never get caught without those crucial defensive buffs. Absolutely insane. She also decreases the duration of all debuffs on allies by 1 turn. Most debuffs in this game, most buffs too, most anything that gets placed on a champion is going to be for 2 turns. So being able to reduce it by even a turn is cutting the effectiveness of debuffs in half. And she gives you a 25% increased attack. It's the small increase attack, but it's still really good. On our A1, she just attacks 1 enemy. So, realistically, this A2 on a 3-turn cooldown, being able to increase durations on all buffs, I think Valerie could easily be taken to 60 if you really are in a scenario like Clan Boss where you need buff extension to progress through the rounds. All right, next we're on to High Elves, and we got to talk about Elfguard. Elfguard, it's been talked to death about, but I don't think a lot of people realize on her A2, on a 2-turn cooldown, whenever she attacks, decrease the enemy's current turn meter by 50%. That means every other turn, she's cutting the target's turn meter in half. In places like Fire Knight, insane. On her A1, she's also bringing a 25% chance to place a small decrease attack. I mean, decrease attack is a really valuable buff, and turn meter manipulation in this game is key. So maybe bring Elfguard to 60, definitely 50. I can see arguments for not bringing her to 60. We've also got another really solid Clan Boss candidate. We've got Eris. On her passive, she just counterattacks whenever an ally is attacked. So somebody hits an ally, she counterattacks. That A1 is going to grant her an extra turn if it kills. So realistically, there is some turn meter shenanigans that you can do with her, where whenever an ally gets attacked, she's constantly firing off attacks, and if it kills, it gives her a turn. Realistically, the big thing for Eris is this right here. On a 3-turn cooldown, remove 1 random debuff from all allies, and once booked up, place a big increased speed on all allies for 2 turns. Increased speed, again, turn meter manipulation and speed are the 2 biggest things in this game, because if you can't take turns, or you're taking a lot more turns than your enemy, you're controlling the battle, and if you can control the battle, you win the battle. So I think even for this, there are Clan Boss teams that people use in high-end accounts where they just have a really geared Eris, and she's still seeing use on Clan Boss teams doing hundreds of millions of damage. Now, of course, the barrier to entry there is gear, and you're not going to have the gear to do that. But getting through hard Clan Boss, brutal Clan Boss, Eris will probably be able to help you get there. Other than that, the only other farmable rare is Avenger, and she's kind of buns, so let's move on. All right, now we've got the Sacred Order, and looking back over at my list, there is a lot of really weird picks that you can make a lot of arguments for. The first one I hear is Sister Militant. She's got one attack, but it's an AoE swing. Her attack stat is fairly low because she's common. You could put her in a stun set for some wave control. She's one of those honorable mentions because she gets talked about a lot, but I don't think, especially as a free-to-play player, that you're going to want to invest any resources into her. Put her in some ramshackle stun gear that you get from Fire Knight. I don't know, bring her to 50 maybe. Feed her. Meh. The first real champion, however, is Outlaw Monk. Now, Outlaw Monk is absolutely insane for clan boss, and you don't even have to bring him to 60 for him to be super useful. So on the A2, place 2 5% poison debuffs on the target for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. Okay, not bad. Where it gets really nutty is this A1. This A1, when fully booked, can give him up to a 25% chance of granting an extra turn. Every extra turn he's taking, he's getting closer to the cooldown on his A2, and you can get into scenarios where he starts chaining extra turns and throwing a full debuff bar on the clan boss of poisons. Really, really good, and will really, really help you out, especially if you didn't choose Kayle for early clan boss progression. Now, it seems like I'm hammering down on clan boss a lot, and I'll probably explain in a future video why clan boss is so important. But TLDR, it is the only real way to effectively farm for shards in this game. So you want to do your clan boss as soon as possible. Another honorable mention is Sergeant. On his A2 on a 2-turn cooldown, he has a pair with a random ally, and then they just attack something. He also has a 2-hitter on his A1. Nichely good for Fire Knight. Then we also have Intercessor. Intercessor is the same reason that I put Word Bearer. She just gives you 25% increased attack for 2 turns on a 2-turn cooldown. So you're always going to have that buff. On her A1, she also has a decreased attack. So 25% extra for your team, 25% decrease for the target, and now you have like a 50% swing on damage. Nichely good, bring her to 50. She'll work out for you. Crusader's here mostly because he's actually just kind of a carbon copy of Sergeant. Same thing, pairs with a ally, 2-turn cooldown, and then in a 2-hitter on his A1. I think Crusader's a little stronger and Sergeant's a little tankier. Yeah. Now, realistically, the star of the show, Armiger. Armiger is someone that has been lovingly referred to in the raid community as a legendary in green, because his kit seems very unassuming at first, but when you really get to the brass tacks of it, it's insane. On his A2, 2-turn cooldown when fully invested, attack one enemy, enemies killed by this skill can't be revived. So block revive can be really good in places like Ice Golem. However, where this is really getting nuts is his damage on this ability is based off of his defense, which means any defensive based nukers or damage dealers are going to be innately a little tankier than your attack based ones. But it also scales off of enemy max HP. That kind of ability, enemy max HP, is good always. It's always good. It's never not good. Sometimes the champions who have them are not that good, but that scaling on damage is universally always good. And Armiger can be used 60 him. 60 him, he'll get you through Fire Knight with his A1, which just decreases turn meter by 30% if it's critical, which it's always going to be critical because you're going to try and crit cap him. And just 1 turn meter control. You might even want to turn the A2 off, but if you have enough turn meter control on Fire Knight, he's turn meter controlling, and then big smacks. Big smacks. Ice Golem, the 2 little golems, smacks them, kills them, blocks revive, they're out the fight. Armiger is insane. Even on my main account, I still sometimes slot Armiger in to teams. He's more of a meme now for me, but he still sometimes gets the job done. And it is absolutely insane. There is a farmable rare in Sacred Order. I don't have him on this account. It's Templar. I'll be honest, he has a provoke and a block damage on his A2, which books up to a respectable 50% on a 4-time random hit. And it's on a 3-turn cooldown. His passive, whenever he's attacked, he attacks whenever a debuff is placed on him. And on his A1, he's bringing big speed decrease. Templar is not bad, but I didn't put him on the list because I think the way you kind of amalgamate your 5-person team together, I think there's better options in other places. But if you picked up Templar, he's going to do work for you. Get him to 50, beat him later on. Next up, we get to the Barbarians. And I'll be honest, I probably have a couple hot takes for these champions based on what some other people have said. The first one I'm going to talk about is Shield Guard. And Shield Guard is... Here's the thing about Shield Guard. He is a farmable uncommon that is off affinity from your main. So if your main is magic, he's spirit, which means any waves that have force champions, he's going to be able to help your starter get through those. His biggest claim to fame is that he can solo Minotaur. And so you can place him and one other champion into Minotaur to do their Minotaur runs. This is... yeah, okay, I can see it, but I also think maybe it's just not really worth investing into him for that, personally. His biggest claim to fame is on his A2, when you book it down to a 2-turn cooldown, he attacks all enemies, and when he crits, he gets 20% turn meter for each crit, sorry. And he's a defensive nuker. The point of this is that he's going to use his A2, he's going to crit the entire enemy wave. He's going to immediately get all of his turn meter back to take another turn. And then he's going to weave in A1s where he's placing decreased speed, at a 50% rate. So just constantly cycling that A2 to basically just spam wave clear. It's funny. And on my main account, I actually do have a fully booked level 60 fully ascended Shield Guard, and I never use him for Minotaur. So the other one, there's another one, Zephyr Sniper. People have talked about her into the ground. She's got an A1 that is really good at increasing the cooldown of enemies' abilities. It's only a 25% chance, but that can be a meaningful 25% chance in wave-based content. She's also bringing a continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns. It's the small one, and it's on a 4-turn cooldown, but it's actually a buff that's really hard to find if you're looking for continuous heal. My best advice for Zephyr Sniper, get her to 50. Maybe put her in a stun set from Fire Knight, and then never think about her again. Then we have War Maiden. Now, I have actually been spending a lot of time in Stage 9, and I have not yet gotten a single copy of War Maiden, but when I do, she absolutely can be brought to 60. She's bringing a AoE 100% chance of a big decreased defense debuff. And that's it. That buff right there is so useful for getting through wave-based content that, I mean, on her A2, she places a big increased attack on herself and an extra hit if the first hit is critical, but the extra hit can't be critical. So, okay. And then her A1, she has a 30% chance of placing a small poison on something. That can absolutely be useful in Clan Boss, where poisons are how you're going to be doing most of your damage. And with the decreased defense she's bringing, she's also, you know, increasing everybody's damage against the Clan Boss. But realistically, it's just the decreased defense. Put her on your arena team. Set her faster than your nuker. She goes in, decreased defense, your nuker blows everybody up. Any wave-based content. Put a decreased defense on them. Your nuker nukes more better. That's it. That is literally why people stand War Maiden so hard. And I absolutely can see it. So, all right. Next, we come up to the Ogryn tribes. And I'll be honest. Rocktooth. Rocktooth. It has 100% heal reduction. Return cooldown. That's it. He does place a increased crit rate on all allies for 1 turn, and it's only 15%. So yeah. And then his A1, it double hits if it crits. But there, yeah, heal reduction. Spirit potion tower. Early on, you're going to need a heal reduction. You get Rocktooth for free. Use Rocktooth. That's it. That's it. And if you use the promo code, you'll get Bellower. And Bellower is actually fantastic. I use the promo code to get Bellower, and he is fantastic. All right, let's move on to a faction that actually has some pretty good options. The first up we've got is Saurus. Saurus is much like Sister Militant, where everything he does is AoE, so you can put him in a stun set to control waves. He also brings heal reduction, although it's only the big heal reduction if it's never the big heal reduction. It's only got a 10% chance if they're above 40% health. And then it doesn't have it just places it if the target is less than 40% health. That's a really finicky, not good way of designing a ability, because once they're at 40% health, chances are the heal reduction is less useful than when they were higher health and healing themselves. Thinking about Fire Knight here. Books down to a 3-turn cooldown, and then his A1, he attacks all enemies. So he's just always attacking all enemies. People also say that you can make him your campaign farmer, but from what I've seen, even in my main account, the amount of gear you need to put on Saurus to make him actually get through waves reliably is not something you're going to have in the early game. So if you want to invest in him, he can definitely do some stuff, but yeah, I don't know. Then we've also got Skinner. Skinner is actually, I think, kind of really good. Nobody talks about. He has on his A2, attacks 1 enemy, removes 2 random buffs from the target. So he's just constantly buff stripping. That, off the top of my head, is really useful in some dungeons like the Magic Potion Keep, which progressing through Magic Potion Keeps, or just Potion Keeps in general, I think, like, even myself, we tend to forget that early on, that can be very meaningful for players. And then once you get a really built up account, you throw whatever together and you get through a Potion Keep. Being able to remove 2 random buffs on a 3-turn cooldown from Magic Keep, early Chimera, which I did unlock on this account, can be very, very useful, especially if you don't have block buffs. He also has a 3-hitter on his A1. That's Fire Knight right there. In the farmable rares, we have Muckstalker, who I haven't gotten a copy of yet, but I actually unironically use in my main account. On a 2-turn cooldown, places a sleep debuff. This is going to get you through early Sand Devil. And while Sand Devil is not what you're worried about immediately, you are eventually going to want to start farming those oils, and that is definitely very useful. He also on his A1 has a 50% chance of getting those block buffs. And block buffs can be useful in a lot of places. In clan boss, if any affinity clan boss, Chimera, early Hydra. I'm not saying I would necessarily bring Mugstalker to a Hydra run, because I do believe that Hydra is open to you a little too early than most accounts can handle it. But if you want to give it a go, Mugstalker brings those block buffs. He also can put a continuous heal on himself, the 2-turn cooldown, but it's a big continuous heal on himself if the incoming damage exceeds 20% HP in one attack. That actually makes him strikingly tanky, especially since his A2 scales off of HP. And his A1 also scales off of HP. So you build him HP, he's still doing some damage, and he's probably really hard to kill. So I think outside of Sand Devils, there is other use cases for Mugstalker, but that's the big one that comes to mind. All right, now we've got Skinwalkers, and I'll be honest, everything early from Skinwalkers is just good. It's so crazy to me. Satyr, on his A1, placing at a 50%, no, I'm sorry, 45% chance. That's the weird thing about some of these uncommons and even some of the rares, is that normally in raid you're used to certain breakpoints, 50% chance, 75% chance, 100% chance. It's very rare that you see 45% chance. Okay, yeah, but it's a 45% chance of placing a decreased speed. That's really good, as we've already mentioned. On his A3 or A2, it feels like an A3 ability. 3-turn cooldown, attacks 4 times at random, decreases the turn meter by 15% if this attack is critical. That's on every hit. That means that is a 60%, if you crit cap him, 60% chance every 3 turns, or I'm sorry, 60% turn meter reduction every 3 turns. And then you're decreasing speed. This guy, yeah, bring him to Fire Knight. You will have a very easy time. We've also got Windtalker, and Windtalker was weird because as I was looking at his kit, I was like, wow, this actually seems not that bad. It might actually be good. I've never actually used a Windtalker, but maybe I'll try it for this account. Who knows? On his A2, he's placing a big increased defense on one target for 2 turns. And he's also healing them by 20% of their max HP. And this is on a 2-turn cooldown. So that means every other turn he's taking, he's spot healing and increasing the defense of your team that is taking incoming damage. That's pretty good. On his A1, he's placing a 35% chance to place a 25% decrease accuracy. Again, decrease accuracy is a weird one because I can see the niche cases, but the problem is most of the times that you're building your champions in the early and mid game, you're not prioritizing resist, which means that you're not, even with decreased accuracy, debuffs coming from bosses are always still going to land. So I don't know. I can see it for sure. I don't know. I'm actually thinking maybe I'll test Windtalker out on this account once I actually get a copy of him. And the farmable rare of Greybeard, he's just good. On his A1, 50% chance, booked up to 70%. Again, 70 versus 70, like, is that 5% just too much for a rare? I don't know. 70% chance of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn. On his A2, hits all enemies, 3-turn cooldown, and it is a 40% chance of placing a freeze debuff for 1 turn. Man, okay, sure. I'm no game designer, so you know what? I'm not gonna say anything. But it'd be better if it was 50%, but it's 40%, so I don't know. But it's going to CC the waves and keep people healthy, because if things can't hit you, then you're not dead. There you go. On his A3, places a shield buff on this champion for 2 turns, and books up to 100% chance of placing a counterattack buff on this champion for 2 turns. The value of the shield is proportional to defense versus a lot of shields that are placed based on percentages of health and such. And it is protected. That's a weird one. You don't see a lot of protected stuff in the rare category. You don't even really see it in the epics either. Even a lot of legendaries don't have placed protected buffs. Protected buffs are, yeah, okay. Maybe that's why they only gave him a 40% chance on the freeze. I don't know. So essentially the idea is you're going to open up with the A2, you're going to try and CC the wave. Moving on from there, you're going to place a shield and a counterattack buff on this guy. And every time the enemy uses an AoE ability, and even if they don't plan on targeting him, it's going to use his counterattack, and then his counterattack, his A1, he's got a chance to then provoke, which means after AoEs have hit you, now those next rounds are going to be more targeted towards Greybeard. I don't know, pair him with a Windtalker, and now he's got increased defense and he's getting heals from all those provokes. It's very weird to me that the uncommons in Skinwalkers, there's not a lot of them, but they're both pretty good. And the one farmable rare is Chef's Kiss. Having that provoke on the A1, ooh, so good. All right, now we come to the orcs. Yeah, there are no orcs. Oops. Demon Spawn, however, does have an actual champion. Where are we? Diabolist. Diabolist can be farmed in stage 12, and she's just coming in for turn meter control. Fills turn meter of all allies by 15%, decreases the turn meter of all enemies by 15%. It's on a 4-turn cooldown, so it's not a lot, but it is your first real chance to get your hands on some meaningful turn meter control, where it's not just you reducing their turn meter or just you increasing yours, you're getting both. So when you think about it, it's like a 30% swing on turn meter across the entire field. So I can kind of see why it's a 4-turn cooldown. On her A2, she's placing a big speed increase on all allies for 2 turns and hitting all enemies. Speed is king, and getting the big speed increase on all allies for 2 turns, much like Eris, this is where you might need to make a value judgment. Eris is a known quantity in some places, whereas Diabolist is just generally better, I think, early. I wouldn't bring Diabolist to 60 because everything she's doing, she can do at 50. And on her A1, 20% chance of placing a sleep. Sleep is one of the worst debuffs in the game because unlike a stun, enemies wake up if they take any damage while under sleep. So she can control the waves pretty well with her entire kit, but the sleep is not really that important. All right, moving right along, we've got the undead hordes, and I'll be honest, there's one champ in here, and it's a meme. So if you like memes, you like Deathhound. Deathhound does one thing. He hits with his A1, he ignores shield and block damage buffs, and he ignores all of the defense of a target. That's it. I have seen clips of him so his use case is arena. He is your arena nuker if you like to meme. He's here for the lulz. That's it. His A2, he can play some poisons, but yeah, no. His A1. Build him as a nuker, attack, crit damage, and he's just going to singularly rip his way through an enemy team in arena. I don't know. I might look into one for this playthrough, for this account. I don't know. All right, we've got Dark Elves, and there's a couple. So we've got Sniper. You start with Sniper. Her A2 is a 4-turn cooldown, but it has a chance of placing a decreased speed on all the enemies. And then her A1, every time she crits, she's filling her own turn meter to get back to the pretty long cooldown on the decreased speed. And it's not a very big decreased speed, but if this is your option for some decreased speed, turn meter control type stuff, maybe don't ever bring her to 60. 50 would be max. I don't even know if I would ascend her, but she might be the only option you have. The other one that is definitely not as iffy for me is Spirit Host, and it is entirely because she is the only uncommon or farmable rare that removes all debuffs from all allies, and then places a block debuffs for 1 turn. Now it's on a 5-turn cooldown, but if you time it correctly, the 1 turn might be all you need. And ironically enough, you could pair her with something like a Valerie, and now it's 2 turns of block debuffs. Is it great? No, but it is your number 1 option early on in an account to get the block debuffs. So something to consider. On her A2, she's also giving all allies the big increase attack. And on her A1, she's healing 50% of the damage inflicted. So she's doing some little heals, but ideally for a Spirit Host, you're not building for the damage. You're building to keep her alive so she can cycle through and keep these going. I think Spirit Host paired with a Valerie and your starter could be a really good bring in increased defense, and something else would be like the go-to starter clan boss setup personally. And I might actually I might try that, because this account, obviously, I don't have all of the resources or access to all the champions that I do on my other account. So Night Revs. There was 1 target. It is worth noting Executioner can be very good in arena, but I tend not to prioritize arena much. He's got a increased defense and counterattack on his own self. It's a 3-turn buff on a 5-turn cooldown. So I don't know. I have to think about the math more often, a lot more. On a 3-turn cooldown, he's attacking all enemies, decreasing turn meter by 20% and placing a small decreased speed. That is generally just good for most content. And then on his A1, he's attacking 1 time and placing a stun. I've not thought about Executioner a lot. I think his A2 could be useful in a lot of wave-based content in general. But most of what I see about Executioner is his PvP pop-offs early game. The actual champion I had on this list was actually Herald. Hear me out. His A2, he's placing increased crit rate. It's the big one, 30%, on all allies for 2 turns. On a 2-turn cooldown. So 2 and 2. Which means you're always pretty much having access to this 30% increased crit rate. I normally don't like increased crit rate buffs, because I feel like normally when you're building champions, you're making them, especially early on, you want to make them at least build their kit a bit so that they can slot in different places, because you don't have access to a ton of options. So you don't have 5 specific champions that are just your dragon champs. You don't have 5 champs that are, this is my Fire Knight team. I do now, but on my main account, or I have them now on my main account, but my main account I've owned for a year and is not free to play. On a free-to-play account, especially early on, you're not able to do that. So when a champion needs crit, you're probably going to crit cap. However, Herald giving the big buff and also ensuring that your team always has it is the one caveat to where I would say this buff is actually useful, has a use case. His A1, he also is bringing decreased speed on regular hits, which is also useful. So I put Herald here because the game, when you can ensure that increased crit rate is always running, then it means that even champions that are not trying to build a ton of crit, 30% is a lot. So you're going to see a lot more crits across your entire team, and there's no downtime to it. So that is my argument for Herald. You let me know in the comments how you feel about this pick. Maybe I came out from left field. Maybe you're like, hey man, me too. Yeah, bring Herald to 50. I think he'll work. All right, now we've got dwarfs, and the dwarves don't have a whole lot going for them, mostly because they have nowhere where you can farm any of their rares. I got Gloral, and I'm using him as food. I got Gloral out of a mystery shard. I haven't actually pulled any of my ancient shards. I'm probably going to save that for a video and like, whoa, you know, come on, What I did say, or who I did choose for this, is I think Tunnel Steward is reducing the duration of buffs on a target. So if you really, really need to strip buffs, he has a niche case for that. He also places small poisons with his A1. He might be the best you have, but I definitely don't even know if I would bring him to 50. Because I think there is, with enough time and patience, you will get better ways to reduce enemy buffs. Or just steal them, or get rid of them, or whatever. Line Infantry I put on here, though, because he does one thing and one thing only. He provokes. On the A2, attacks 2 times at random, and has a 40% chance of placing a provoke. And on his A1, he has a 25% chance of placing a provoke. And he wants to be built defensive for damage. If you need to provoke this guy, and you just need constant provokes. So you're going into Doom Tower and you're fighting the first Magma Dragon, and you really want that provoke. This guy, all this guy does is provoke. So in that niche scenario, maybe build this guy to 50 to get through that those first couple floors. Other than that, obviously, I would. Hey, the guy provoke. Look at him. This beard right here. That would provoke me into making some poor choices, for sure. And last but not least, we've got the Sylvan Watchers, and I put down Branch Weaver. Honestly, I put down Branch Weaver because I feel like you can't just... I've already snubbed the Orcs. I almost snubbed the Ogryn tribes. I can't just keep snubbing everybody. And I think Branch Weaver is okay. 50% chance on attacking all enemies, decreased speed, 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown, which means that with the decreased speed and enough speed on this champion, you can just keep that debuff rolling. And on the A1, interestingly enough, she's placing a 15% increased speed on the ally with the highest turn meter when she attacks, but she can't do it to herself. Now, funnily enough, when I first read this, I was thinking to myself, man, so one person on my team is always going to have increased speed. But then I started to think, actually, because of the increased speed, the turn meter would start filling differently. So it's really, this buff is going to be bouncing around between 2 champions. Bring her to 50, try her out, feed her. I don't know. I just put her in here because I didn't want to snub kind of what is one of my favorite factions. When the Sylvan Watchers got added, I don't like elves, but I really like wood elves. And I've never been able to make any sense of that. And this faction just has some of my favorite champions of all time. So I don't know, but Anyway, guys, that's been the list. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you hate the ideas? Do you love them? Do you think I really messed up? Did I miss somebody that you personally think is in the uncommon list and deserves more time in the sun? Let me know. Other than that, if it's not too much to ask, drop a like, maybe subscribe. The channel is moving forward and we're going to try and do big things around here. But for now, that's been all from me, Titus, and I hope to see you guys next time.